diving into a conflict zone today.
Yeah.
Israel and Hezbollah.
Right.
Things are escalating really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
You sent us this article, and it's clear this is a really big deal.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
We're talking like over 1,100 targets hit by Israeli airstrikes just in the past 24 hours.
It's a lot.
Rocket attacks on Israeli cities.
Mm-hmm.
And then the civilian death toll is awful, and it's just climbing.
It's tragic.
So we need to understand what's happening, like, right now.
For sure.
Why it matters and where this could all be headed.
Right.
I know you always say context is key.
Oh, absolutely.
So before we get into, like, all the details of what's going on right now,
Yeah.
can you just give us a little bit of the background?
Sure.
This isn't a new clash, is it?
No, absolutely not. The tensions between Israel and Hezbollah are very deep-rooted. Yeah. We're talking decades of conflict here, going back to the creation of Israel in 1948. It's layers upon layers of territorial disputes, political differences. You also can't forget the role of external actors, especially Iran. They play a significant role.
Okay, so unpack those historical roots for us a little bit. What's fueling the fire now?
Well, you can't talk about this without talking about the displacement of Palestinians that happened when Israel was established. This triggered wars involving Lebanon, and by the 1980s, Hezbollah emerged in Lebanon with the goal of resisting Israeli influence.
And they've been a thorn in Israel's side ever since, haven't they?
I think that's one way to put it, yeah. They're a very powerful non-state actor. So think of them as a political party and a militant group combined. And they are deeply embedded in Lebanese society. Mm-hmm. And significantly, they're backed by Iran.
Yeah. The article that you sent me specifically mentioned airstrikes and rocket attacks.
Right.
Can you take us to the streets? What's this escalation actually look like on the ground?
Well, we're basically seeing the region engulfed in a level of violence that we haven't seen in years, honestly.
Wow.
We're talking, again, over 1,100 targets hit by Israeli airstrikes in just 24 hours.
It's hard to even fathom that.
And they're aiming to dismantle Hezbollah's infrastructure. So we're talking weapons depots, rocket launchers, command centers. But the really big challenge here is that Hezbollah operates within civilian areas, which makes it almost impossible to avoid civilian casualties.
And this is where things get so complicated, so heartbreaking. This isn't a military chess match. It's about real people.
Exactly. The human cost is probably the most tragic aspect of this entire conflict, and the numbers are already devastating. The article mentions over 356 deaths in Lebanon alone, and we know that that number is going to rise.
Yeah, behind those headlines, behind, military objectives, are families trapped in their homes, hospitals overwhelmed, and just this constant fear of being caught in the crossfire.
Absolutely. And we can't forget about the mental toll this is taking on civilians. Imagine you receive an evacuation warning from Israel. You stay, you risk getting caught in the fight, but you leave. You're uprooted. You're just a pawn in this conflict.
It's a no-win situation, really.
It is.
And then, on top of all that, there's the added layer of Hezbollah's tactics. They're not just sitting back and taking these strikes, are they?
They are not. They are masters at what's known as asymmetrical warfare. Think David versus Goliath.
Okay.
They may be outmatched in firepower, but they utilize these very specific strategies that exploit their enemy's vulnerabilities. In this case, they're launching rockets indiscriminately into Israel, targeting towns and cities, and they're really trying to inflict maximum damage, maximum disruption.
And this article, some of these rockets are very advanced.
Oh, yeah.
They even carry cluster munitions.
It's a way of leveling the playing field. When you don't have, fighter jets and tanks, they have other ways of waging war. And despite the strikes against them, Hezbollah is proving to be resilient. They adapt. And unfortunately, they are still very, very capable of causing a lot of harm.
It's terrifying, honestly. It feels like we're watching, a car careen towards a cliff.
Right.
But we can't look away. And this is where the role of these external actors becomes so crucial.
Yeah.
Especially the U.S. and Iran.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
The U.S. has a vested interest in this region, obviously. And they are clearly concerned about this situation spiraling out of control. So they're sending more military personnel, warships, to the region, not necessarily to directly intervene, but more as a show of force, a way to prevent further escalation and maybe, hopefully, encourage some kind of dialogue.
So it's a delicate dance. They're trying to project strength and deter further aggression, but they're also trying to walk this diplomatic tightrope.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
It's a tightrope walk.
Yeah.
But I think the real wild card here, the biggest unknown, is Iran. And that's where things get really interesting. It really is fascinating.
Yeah.
Iran's role in all of this,
Yeah.
they're playing this really high-stakes game,
Right.
juggling all these different agendas.
Mm-hmm.
On the one hand,
Yeah.
they're Hezbollah's main benefactor.
Right.
They provide them with weapons,
Yeah.
funding,
Mm-hmm.
even strategic guidance.
Right.
But at the same time,
Yeah.
they're trying to have these really delicate negotiations with the U.S.
Right.
over their nuclear program.
Yeah, so they're walking a tightrope.
Exactly.
They're trying to support Hezbollah without, like,
Right.
sparking a wider conflict that could derail
Yeah.
all those talks
It's true.
with the U.S.
It's like they're trying to win on multiple fronts at the same time.
Yeah.
And it really makes you wonder,
Yeah.
how far is Iran willing to go?
Right.
Will they risk it all for Hezbollah
Yeah.
and potentially get dragged into a direct conflict?
Because if that happens, then, like, all bets are off.
Oh, absolutely.
We could be looking at, like, a regional war
Oh, yeah.
with global consequences.
It's true.
Okay, so with that terrifying thought kind of lingering in the air,
Sure.
let's shift gears a little bit
Yeah.
and talk about potential outcomes here.
Okay.
What are we looking at here?
Yeah.
What are the possible scenarios?
Right?
Best case,
Yeah.
worst case.
Well, in a perfect world,
Yeah.
we'd see some kind of negotiated ceasefire.
Hmm.
It's happened before.
Right.
And there are always diplomats working behind the scenes,
Right.
trying to find a peaceful resolution.
Yeah.
But I have to say,
Yeah.
realistically,
Yeah.
given the current climate,
Hmm.
the level of distrust,
Right.
the anger on both sides,
Yeah.
it doesn't feel very likely right now, does it?
Yeah. It's hard to be optimistic, I think, when
Yeah.
you see those images
It's tough.
coming out of the region.
Yeah, it's really hard.
So ceasefire feels like a long shot.
Yeah,
What are some other possibilities?
Yeah.
What else could unfold
right.
in the coming days, weeks, months,
Well, another very real scenario is continued escalation.
Mm-hmm.
Israel could very well decide that airstrikes alone aren't enough.
Okay.
They might opt for a ground invasion of southern Lebanon, aiming to dismantle Hezbollah's infrastructure on the ground
Okay.
and create some kind of buffer zone.
That seems incredibly risky, though.
It is.
I mean, a ground invasion would almost certainly lead to
Oh, yeah.
a much higher death toll
Absolutely.
on both sides.
Hugely.
Right.
And it significantly increases the chances of pulling Hezbollah's allies,
Yeah.
namely Iran,
Right.
directly into the conflict.
And that brings us right back to
Exactly.
that worst case scenario,
Yeah.
a regional war with Iran at the center.
Right.
Are those the two main paths?
I'd say those are the two most likely scenarios, yes.
Okay.
But you're right.
Yeah.
Conflicts like this are notoriously unpredictable.
Right.
There are always external factors to consider,
Yeah.
unforeseen events
Mm-hmm.
that could change the entire trajectory.
Totally. In a heartbeat.
So, given this incredibly fluid and volatile situation,
For sure.
what should we be paying close attention to?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah. What are the key indicators?
Yeah.
The telltale signs that things are going in one direction versus another?
Well, the first thing I would say is watch the rhetoric
Okay.
coming from these key players.
Okay.
I'm talking about official statements from Israel,
Uh-huh.
Lebanon,
Yeah.
the U.S.,
Right.
and especially Iran.
Okay.
Look very closely at the language that they're using.
Okay.
Are they hinting at de-escalation,
Right.
or are they using much more aggressive language,
Mhm.
signaling a hardening of their stance
Okay.
and a potential escalation?
So read between the lines of those speeches.
Absolutely.
Those press releases, those diplomatic communique.
It's gassing it.
It's all about subtext.
It is.
That's
Actions speak louder than words, of course.
Right.
Pay close attention to any military movements
Mm-hmm.
or deployments.
Yeah.
Are we seeing a buildup of troops?
Right.
Are we seeing any unusual naval activity in the region?
Okay.
Those could be strong indicators
Right.
that they are preparing for further military action.
It's like we're piecing together a puzzle,
It is.
but we've got like missing information.
You do.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're just trying to find those subtle clues,
Yeah.
those seemingly insignificant details
Yeah.
that actually help us kind of like
Totally.
understand
the bigger picture.
the bigger picture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then finally,
Okay.
and this is the one that we should all be hoping for.
Watch very closely for any signs of diplomacy.
Okay.
Are there whispers of back-channel negotiations happening?
Mm-hmm.
Are international organizations like the
Yeah.
UN getting involved,
Right.
trying to mediate?
Okay.
Those could be glimmers of hope,
Yeah.
small but significant steps
Right.
towards a peaceful resolution.
So much uncertainty.
There is
So much at stake.
a lot.
As we kind of wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
it feels like we're holding our breath a little bit, watching these events unfold
In real time.
in real time.
It's true.
And this is where it gets even more complicated.
Yep.
Because this conflict raises, I think, much larger questions about the very nature of war
Right.
in the 21st century. We've been really focused on, the immediate crisis here.
Right.
The escalating violence.
Yeah.
The geopolitical chess game. But we can't forget about the human cost
Absolutely not.
of this conflict.
Yeah. It's easy to get caught up in all the analysis and military strategy and the political maneuvering.
Right.
But we have to remember the human beings,
Mm-hmm.
the families huddled in bomb shelters,
Mm-hmm. It's just awful.
the kids that are growing up too fast
Yeah.
amidst all this chaos.
It's a stark reminder that
too
these aren't just like abstract
No.
geopolitical issues
Yeah.
we're talking about.
These are real lives
Yeah.
that are at stake.
Real life.
Real families.
Yeah.
Communities.
Yeah.
Torn apart.
And this conflict with its
Yeah.
blurring of lines and unconventional tactics
Right.
really forces us to confront, I think,
Yeah.
some really uncomfortable truths
Yeah.
about the nature of war
It's true.
in the 21st century.
This is not your grandfather's war, that's for sure.
No.
Hezbollah's use of asymmetrical warfare, operating within civilian areas,
Yeah.
blending in with the population.
Yeah.
I mean, it challenges the very definition
Right,
of
yeah.
a battlefield.
It's like trying to fight a ghost.
It is.
And it brings up these incredibly
It's-
complex
it's like,
ethical questions,
Yeah.
not just for Hezbollah,
Right.
but for Israel as well.
It's true.
Like, how do you possibly
Right.
eliminate a threat
Right.
that is embedded within a civilian population
It's so tough.
without causing immense suffering
Yeah.
to innocent people?
There's no easy answer.
There isn't.
There really isn't.
No.
The potential for collateral damage is enormous.
It is.
And
Yeah,
even with
yeah.
the most sophisticated weaponry,
Right.
the best intelligence,
Mhm.
there's just no guarantee of success.
We've covered a lot of ground today
We have
in this deep dive.
a lot.
We really unpacked, I think,
Yeah.
this immediate crisis,
Mm-hmm.
the historical roots of the conflict,
Yeah.
examine the motivations
Right.
of all the key players,
It's true.
analyzed all these potential outcomes.
Absolutely.
Where does this leave us?
I think we're left with this sense of
Yeah.
urgency,
Yeah.
uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very volatile situation, capable of really going in any number of directions.
Yeah.
And it's a reminder
It is a reminder.
how interconnected our world really is.
Yeah. Yeah.
How these conflicts in one region can just
Yeah.
ripple outward,
Yeah.
impact global stability,
Yeah.
and ignite these tensions
Uh-huh.
far beyond the immediate battleground.
It's easy to feel, I think, overwhelmed
Yeah.
by all of it.
It's complex.
It is.
Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power. That's right.
And understanding is that first step towards
That's true.
informed action.
It is.
So
Yeah.
stay curious, everybody.
Stay informed.
Stay informed.
Yeah.
And most importantly, I think,
What's that?
remember the human cost
Remember the human beings.
of this conflict,
Hey.
whose lives are being impacted
Yeah.
every single day.
That's all the time we have for today's deep dive.
Great conversation.
Thank you so much for bringing your expertise
Always a pleasure.
to this really important topic.
Happy to be here.
And we'll be back next week with another deep dive.